Obese girl sat alone at the town feast until a mountain man said, "Act like you're my wife." The laughter hit her before the words did. It rolled across Silverbrook's Harvest Square like a wave, sharp, bright, and mean. Fiddles were playing, lanterns were swinging overhead, tables groaned under the weight of roasted pork, pies, and steaming casseroles. More than 500 people had turned out for the biggest night of the year, and Magnolia Maggie Hartwell sat alone at the very edge of it all, under the big oak tree, pretending she didn't hear a thing. She kept her eyes on her plate, on the safe little island of dry bread and limp salad she'd allowed herself. Not because she wasn't hungry. Her stomach had been growling since noon, but because she could feel the stares every time she walked near the food tables. "Careful," one woman had muttered loudly when Maggie reached for a slice of ham. "Leave some for the rest of us." Another had laughed. "If she starts, there won't be any left." So Maggie took bread, a spoon of salad, and then she fled to the shadows, to her usual post beneath the oak, where the lantern light didn't quite reach, and no one would have to see her if they didn't want to, or look at her long enough to remember they hated what they saw. She smoothed her worn brown dress over her lap, too tight at the seams, too snug around her soft belly and heavy hips. At 29, Maggie had long since given up hoping she would wake up thin. She was what she was, 5'4", nearly 120 kilos, with strong arms, thick thighs, and a body that made chairs creak and men look away. Or laugh. A shrill voice cut across the music. "Oh, look, the pig didn't even take any pork. Afraid we'll notice how much she can eat?" Maggie didn't have to look up to know it was Martha Wellington, the banker's daughter, lace-perfect and ribboned, flanked by her two equally pretty friends. "Maybe she's on a diet," Sarah Collins snickered, "so some poor man might actually see her ankles one day." Emily Brooks leaned in to peer at Maggie's plate. "Bread and salad. She's pretending. You know she eats half the pantry when no one's looking." The three of them laughed, bright and cruel. Maggie swallowed hard, focusing on breathing, not crying. Not here, not in front of everyone. She'd survived this town's cruelty since childhood. Whispers at church, jokes in the general store, men making bets about who'd dance with her as a dare. But tonight felt worse. Tonight, it felt like the entire town was in on the joke. A group of young men staggered past, half drunk and loud. One pointed straight at her. "Hey, Maggie, why aren't you dancing?" he called. "Floorboards might hold if we clear everyone else off first." Roars of laughter exploded around them. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping on the packed dirt. She had to get out, away from the music, the lanterns, the eyes. A small child barreled past, chasing a hoop, and crashed into her side. Maggie stumbled. The plate flew from her hands, smashing against the ground, bread and salad scattering in the dust. Silence. Then another burst of laughter, louder, harsher. "Look at that!" Martha crowed. "Too clumsy to hold a plate. Maybe she's just desperate to lick it off the ground." Maggie dropped to her knees, hands shaking as she tried to gather the shards. Tears blurred her vision, hot and humiliating. Her cheeks burned. She could hear them laughing, all of them, their voices blending into one long sound. "You don't belong here." Her fingers slipped on a jagged edge. A sharp sting bloomed as it sliced her skin. Then a shadow fell over her. A large, calloused hand closed gently around her wrist, stopping her before the glass could cut deeper. A low, steady voice rumbled above her head. "Leave it," the man said. "Stand up." Maggie froze. The laughter faded. Conversation stuttered. She looked up and found herself staring at a chest as broad as a barn door, a coat dusted with trail dirt, a beard shot through with silver, and eyes the color of winter storms. Wyatt Blackwood, the reclusive mountain man from the high country. He glanced once at her bleeding finger, then at the crowd. His jaw hardened. "From this moment on," he said, voice carrying clear to the edges of the square, "you act like you're my wife." He squeezed her hand, anchoring her to her feet as the town went silent. "Anyone has a problem with her," he added, gaze sweeping over every gaping face. "They answer to me. If you're listening to this right now, from a noisy city, a quiet village, or your own little corner of the world, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because in this small Montana town, everything is about to change for Maggie Hartwell. For a long, breathless moment, no one moved. The fiddles had stopped mid-note. The lantern flames flickered as if the wind itself held its breath. Wyatt Blackwood didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood like a wall between Maggie and the world, broad-shouldered, weather-scarred, dangerous in the way mountains are dangerous, unmoving, unbending, impossible to ignore. And he held her hand, not like a man claiming property, like a man making a promise. Maggie's knees trembled. "Wife?" she whispered, shaking her head. "You don't even know me." Wyatt didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on the crowd, cold, steel-hard, silent. Martha Wellington recovered first. Her lip curled. "She's your wife? Since when would a man like you choose—" Wyatt's gaze cut to her. One look, sharp as a blade. Martha's words died. Wyatt spoke low, but every syllable carried. "Doesn't matter when. Matters that she is. And any person here who touches her, mocks her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me. Do we understand each other?" A few men took a step back. Someone muttered, "Let it go, Martha." No one else dared speak. Not against Wyatt Blackwood, the man who had broken a horse thief's wrist with one twist, who had ridden out alone during the avalanche last winter to pull a trapped family from the snow, who lived so deep in the mountains people told stories about him. Maggie felt her breath shaking in her chest. This wasn't happening, couldn't be happening. Why was a man like him, strong, feared, respected, standing up for her? Wyatt leaned closer, voice dropping so only she could hear. "Just go along with it for now. I'll explain." His palm pressed against her lower back, steady, guiding, protective. He led her away from the circle of lanterns, past musicians frozen with their bows in mid-air, past families who quickly looked elsewhere, pretending not to stare. Maggie didn't breathe until they were well beyond the square, walking toward the dark line of pines. Only then did she dare speak. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. They'll say things about you." "Let them," Wyatt said. "My reputation wasn't worth protecting the way they treated you." Maggie flinched. The truth stung more than cruelty ever could. Wyatt stopped beside the hitching rail behind the old blacksmith shop. His horse, a massive black gelding, snorted as Wyatt reached up to pat its neck. Then he turned to her, really turned. His eyes swept her face, not in disgust, not in pity, but in study, as though trying to take in every tear-stained inch. "You're bleeding," he murmured. He took her hand gently, as if afraid to hurt her more. His thumb brushed near the thin red cut along her finger. "We'll clean it." Maggie's voice broke. "Why?" Wyatt frowned. "Why what? Why are you helping me?" She swallowed, throat tight. "People don't Men don't. No one. Wyatt exhaled through his nose, the muscles in his jaw shifting beneath his beard. I watched you sit alone for an hour, he said, just trying to eat in peace. I watched them laugh at you for no reason except that it made them feel big. Maggie looked away. I'm used to it. You shouldn't be. A long, still silence settled between them. The sound of the feast drifted faintly through the town. Laughter, music, plates clattering, life that had never included her. Wyatt rested one hand on the saddle horn, the other still holding her bleeding one. I'm not asking you to pretend to be my wife forever, he said quietly, only long enough to shut them up. Maggie stared at him. But why me? This time, Wyatt did look away, for just a heartbeat, as though choosing his words. When he met her gaze again, something raw flickered behind his eyes. Because I know what it looks like, he said, when a woman sits alone and hopes no one notices her. I know the sound of a crowd laughing at someone who doesn't deserve it. Maggie's breath hitched. You knew someone like that? My wife, he said softly. My late wife. Her heart clenched. Wyatt continued. She wasn't thin, not by anyone's measure. The town treated her like she wasn't worth the space she took up, but she was the strongest woman I ever knew. His gaze traveled over Maggie's face again, and this time she felt seen, not inspected, not judged. Seen? You remind me of her, he said simply. Maggie's eyes stung. Tears blurred the lantern light. What happened to her? Wyatt shook his head. Another time. His voice tightened. Tonight was about you. He straightened, broad and sure against the night sky. I'm headed back to my cabin in an hour, he said. It's 20 miles up the North Ridge. Quiet, safe, no one to bother you. Maggie blinked. Are you asking me to go with you? Wyatt's answer was steady, unflinching. You don't owe me anything, but you don't deserve the way this town treats you. If you want a place to stay, just for tonight, or longer if you choose, you have it. Her heart pounded so loudly she almost couldn't hear her own whisper. And if I say yes, what happens then? Wyatt stepped closer, the warm strength of him filling the cool night air. Then, he said, you act like you're my wife a little longer, long enough for them to leave you alone. Maggie's breath trembled. Was this real? Was she dreaming? Wyatt held her gaze unblinking. Do you want that, Maggie? Her voice barely escaped. Yes. He nodded once, firm, decisive. Then it settled. And with those 4 quiet words, Maggie Hartwell's entire life shifted. Forever. The road out of Silverbrook was nothing more than a narrow ribbon of dirt, cutting through pine and shadow, and Maggie had never felt as small or as noticed as she did riding beside Wyatt Blackwood. He didn't speak much, but he didn't need to. Wyatt was the kind of man whose silence said everything. They left the lantern glow of the feast behind, the last echoes of laughter fading into the cold night air. Wyatt guided his massive black gelding with one hand, the reins in his fist, the other hand steadying Maggie every time the wagon jolted. Maggie sat beside him on the worn leather bench, wrapped in a thick wool blanket he'd insisted she take. She held it tight around herself, partly for warmth, partly to hide the trembling in her hands. The forest swallowed them slowly, lanterns fading to pinpricks behind the trees, music dissolving into wind and needled branches. Wyatt broke the silence first. You warm enough? His voice was low, rough, warm in a way she hadn't expected. Yes, she whispered. Thank you. A long moment passed. She could feel him watching her from the corner of his eye. You don't have to look so scared, he said. I'm not. Her voice cracked. She took a breath. I'm not scared of you. Wyatt nodded once, approving. Good. You shouldn't be. Maggie clasped her cold fingers together. You should know. People saying I'm your wife. It's going to follow you. They'll whisper. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Let them. But they'll think less of you. Wyatt breathed out a laugh, quiet, humorless. People think all kinds of things, most of them wrong. I don't live my life for this town, Maggie. Her chest tightened. No man had ever talked about her like she wasn't a burden. No man had ever spoken her name like it mattered. The wagon hit a rut. Maggie tipped sideways. Wyatt reached out instantly, his hand closing firmly around her waist to steady her. His fingers were warm, spanning her side easily, and for one split, breathtaking moment, her body leaned into his. Careful, he murmured, not moving his hand until she was steady again. Her cheeks burned in the dark. Sorry, she whispered. You don't have to apologize for losing your balance, Wyatt said. The road's rough. She nodded and looked ahead. The moon was rising, silvering the tops of the pines, laying a pale path on the dirt road. Somewhere the river rushed, unseen but loud. Maggie's thoughts drifted, and apparently, Wyatt noticed. What are you thinking? He asked. She swallowed. That I must look ridiculous, sitting here beside you. People probably think... Wyatt cut her off. They think too much. You think too little of yourself. Her breath caught. No one's ever said that to me. Wyatt didn't answer for a moment. When he did, his voice was softer. They should have. She turned her face toward him. In the moonlight, his profile was etched in shadow. Strong nose, square jaw, the faint scar near his temple. He looked carved from the wilderness itself. How far is your cabin? She asked, partly to change the subject before she melted. About another hour, he said. If you're tired, you can lean against me. Her pulse jumped. I'm fine, she said quickly. Wyatt glanced at her. You're shaking. It's just cold. He reached behind the bench and pulled forward a heavy fur-lined cloak. Here, he said, put this on. I already have a blanket. That blanket's thin. The mountains get colder at night. He draped the cloak around her shoulders before she could protest, his hands brushing her upper arms. Warmth flooded her body instantly, not just from the fur, but from the simple, unexpected tenderness of the gesture. Thank you, she whispered. Get used to it, Wyatt said, flicking the reins. I look after the people under my roof. Under my roof. The words settled over her like the cloak. Maggie's mind churned with questions she didn't dare voice. Why had he stepped in tonight? Why had he called her wife without hesitation? Why did his touch make her feel safe instead of terrified? But Wyatt spoke first. You're probably wondering why I did it. She stiffened. Yes. Wyatt inhaled deeply, the leather reins creaking under his tightening grip. When I saw you tonight, he said quietly, standing alone, trying to disappear, I remembered someone I loved very much, someone who spent her whole life being mocked for the shape of her body. Maggie's throat closed. Your wife, she whispered. He nodded. People treated her like she didn't deserve joy, like she had no right to be at the table with them. Same as you tonight. Her eyes burned. But she was stronger than all of them, Wyatt continued, kind, steady, full of heart. She never stopped loving people, even when they failed her. He paused. You have that same look she had, Maggie, the look of someone who's been hurt so long she forgets she deserves better. Maggie covered her mouth with her hand. She didn't want to cry in front of him, but his words pierced straight through her defenses. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be." Wyatt's voice softened. "Just let me help you for tonight, for however long you choose." Silence settled between them again. Different now. Warmer, trusting, tentative, dangerously tender. After a while, Maggie whispered, "What will people think when they find out I'm not really your wife?" Wyatt didn't even hesitate. "They won't find out," he said. "Not until you want them to." Her head snapped toward him. "You want me to keep pretending?" Wyatt's jaw flexed. "It keeps them from hurting you, and it keeps them from bothering me. So yes, if you're willing." "And if I'm not?" Wyatt flicked a glance down at her, soft, protective, quietly intense. "Then I take you back in the morning, no questions asked." Maggie stared at him, the man who had stepped between her and the whole town, the man who looked at her without disgust, the man who had seen her, really seen her, when no one else ever had. "I'll stay," she said, voice trembling, "if you'll have me." Wyatt's hands tightened on the reins. A muscle jumped in his jaw. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. "I'll have you, Maggie." The road wound upward, toward the mountains, toward his cabin, toward a life she had never imagined. The cabin rose out of the darkness like something carved directly from the mountainside, tall, timber-framed, and solid enough to withstand every storm Montana had ever thrown at it. Lantern light glowed in 2 windows, warm and steady against the cold night. Smoke curled from the chimney in a slow ribbon. Maggie sucked in a breath. She had never seen a home like this, not in books, not in dreams. Her entire life had been cramped rooms, thin walls, cold floors. This place felt safe, big enough to breathe in, strong enough to protect anything inside it. Wyatt pulled the wagon to a stop. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get you warm." He jumped down first, boots crunching on gravel, then reached up to help her. She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His grip enveloped her completely, steady, warm, grounding. When he lifted her down, her body came close to his for one startling second. She felt heat rush to her cheeks. "Easy," he murmured. His hand slid to her elbow, guiding her toward the porch. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly warm. The fire in the stone hearth blazed bright. Thick rugs softened the floor. The air smelled faintly of pine, leather, and something Maggie couldn't place, something that smelled like Wyatt himself. Cold wind, wood smoke, and horse. A table stood near the kitchen area. A couch and 2 deep chairs faced the fire. Shelves of books lined the wall opposite. Everything was neat, but lived in. "This is beautiful," Maggie whispered. Wyatt shrugged. "Built most of it myself. Needed something sturdy during winters." "You built this?" Her eyes widened. "Piece by piece." He hung his coat on a peg. "A man can build anything if he's stubborn enough." Maggie's heart tugged unexpectedly. Wyatt walked to the hearth, tossing in 2 more logs. "Sit," he said. "Warm your hands." She did, perching on the edge of the nearest chair, wrapping her fingers together to keep them from shaking. Wyatt moved quietly around the cabin, lighting 2 more lanterns, pulling a heavy kettle from the hook above the fire, filling it with water. "Tea," he said simply. "Good for shock." Maggie blinked. "Shock? You've had a day no one should have." His voice was rough but gentle. Her throat tightened. She lowered her gaze to her hands. Wyatt saw it. He always saw everything. "You're safe," he said. "Nobody here will laugh at you." A soft sound escaped her, not quite a sob, not quite a breath. She swallowed hard. He poured steaming tea into a stoneware mug and brought it to her. Careful, it's hot. She took it, her fingers brushing his. A small spark zipped up her arm. She prayed he didn't notice. He did. His eyes flicked to her hand just for a second before he stepped back, resting one forearm on the mantel. "You can stay in the guest room tonight," he said. "Down the hall, second door." Maggie nodded. "Thank you." "You hungry?" She hesitated. "A little." He lifted a brow. "You had nothing to eat." She flushed. "I didn't want to give them more to laugh about." Wyatt muttered something under his breath that sounded like a curse. Then he strode to the pantry, grabbed bread, smoked ham, and a jar of preserves. "You're eating," he said firmly, "not because you need to please anyone, because your body needs food." She blinked at him. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Wyatt paused with the knife in his hand. His shoulders rose and fell beneath his shirt. "Because you deserve better than what you've been given," he said quietly. "Because no one should eat alone under a tree at a feast." He sliced the ham. "And because I'm not the kind of man who lets cruelty stand." Maggie pressed a hand to her mouth. Tears stung again. He brought the plate to her, ham, bread, preserves, and a little butter, and set it gently on her lap. "Eat," he said again, softer this time. She took a bite. Warmth spread through her chest. She didn't realize she was crying until Wyatt knelt beside her, offering a clean cloth. "Maggie?" She shook her head. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm crying." "You do." His gaze held hers. "You've held everything in for too damn long." The truth of it broke something fragile in her. A sob slipped out before she could stop it. Maggie covered her face, ashamed. Wyatt caught her wrists, not harshly but firmly, and pulled her hands away. "Look at me." She did. His gray eyes were steady, calm, unshaken. "You're not weak," he said. "Crying doesn't make you weak. What they did would have crushed anyone." Maggie's breath stuttered. I don't understand why you would stand up for someone like me." Wyatt's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. "I didn't stand up for someone like you. I stood up for you." Her heart lurched. "That's different," he added. Maggie stared at him, at the rugged lines of his face, the silver in his beard, the eyes that seemed to see straight through bravado and shame and pain. She'd never felt so exposed or so safe. Wyatt rose and stepped back, giving her space. "Finish your food, then I'll show you to your room." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. When she finished, Wyatt took the empty plate and walked down the hall. "Come." Maggie followed. He opened a door. The room was simple but lovely. Soft quilts on the bed, a small dresser, a window overlooking the dark pines. "If you need anything, my room's the next one over." Maggie hesitated at the threshold. "Wyatt?" He turned. "Why did you tell them I was your wife?" she whispered. The air between them drew tight. Wyatt stepped closer, just close enough for his shadow to brush hers. "Because," he said, voice low and sure, "men don't mock a man's wife. And because that was the only way to make them stop." Maggie's breath hitched. But what if people believe it? Wyatt's eyes darkened with something she couldn't name. "Then let them," he said slowly. "It protects you. It changes nothing for me." She swallowed. "But it changes everything for me." Wyatt's voice softened, barely. "Maybe that's what you needed." Her pulse fluttered wildly in her throat. Before she could say more, he stepped back. "Rest now. Tomorrow we talk about whatever comes next." Then he closed the door gently behind her. Maggie leaned against it, heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it through the wood. The cabin was quiet. The fire crackled down the hall, and somewhere beyond the door Wyatt Blackwood walked away slowly, as if he wasn't entirely sure he'd done the right thing bringing her here. But Maggie knew one thing with absolute clarity. Nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Maggie woke to the soft hush of snow. At first, she thought it was a dream, the kind she used to have as a little girl, imagining herself tucked inside a warm, safe house where no one could reach her. But when she blinked fully awake, the weight of the quilt wrapped around her shoulders was real. The smell of pine and wood smoke was real, and the faint orange glow of fire slipping in through the cracked door was unmistakably real. She sat up slowly, breath misting in the cool morning air. Wyatt's cabin, Wyatt Blackwood, the feast, the humiliation, his hand in hers. "You act like you're my wife." It all came rushing back. Her cheeks burned hot even under the cold air. She slipped out of bed, wrapped the quilt tighter, and padded barefoot down the hall. The closer she came to the living room, the clearer the sounds became. Wood splitting, kettle boiling, boots shifting on thick rugs. Wyatt was already awake. Of course he was. He stood near the hearth, splitting logs with an axe, as if the act itself kept his mind steady. His coat hung open, sleeves rolled up, forearms corded and strong. The early morning light caught in the silver thread in his hair. He looked every bit the mountain man people whispered about. Except here, in the quiet of his own cabin, he also looked tired and haunted. Maggie hesitated in the doorway. Wyatt turned immediately, as if he'd sensed her. His expression softened, a rare, fleeting warmth. "Morning," he said. "Morning." She pulled the quilt closer. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't." Wyatt set the axe aside and motioned toward the table. "Sit, tea's ready." Maggie walked over, feeling strangely shy. He poured her a cup and set it gently in front of her. His movements were careful, deliberate, like he was afraid she might bolt. "I made porridge," he said, "with berries." She blinked. "Berries? In winter?" "Dried. Found them in the pantry." Maggie stared down at the warm bowl in front of her. "No one has ever cooked breakfast for me." Wyatt paused, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "They should have." Her throat tightened. They ate in silence for a few minutes, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, until Wyatt spoke again. "I need to tell you something," he said. The spoon stilled in her hand. "All right." He sat back, eyes fixed on the fire rather than her. "You asked about my wife." His voice dropped. "About what happened to her." Maggie's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to open that door so soon. "You don't have to," she began. "I do," he said. "If you're going to stay here, even just for a little while, you deserve to know." She waited quietly. Wyatt exhaled slowly. "Clara and I were married 12 years. We had 2 boys and a little girl. Lived farther up the ridge. It was a good life." His voice wavered on the last sentence, not weak, but raw. "What happened?" Maggie whispered. Wyatt's eyes stayed on the fire. "There was a blizzard, worst in a decade. I'd gone out to check on some trapped cattle. I thought I'd be home by nightfall." His jaw clenched. "I wasn't." He paused, swallowing tightly. "When I returned, the cabin had collapsed under the weight of snow. They were inside." Maggie covered her mouth, tears springing instantly. "Oh, Wyatt, I'm so sorry." He nodded, not in acceptance but acknowledgment of her sympathy. People said it was no one's fault, but I should have been there. A silence fell between them. Then Wyatt turned to her, really turned, and Maggie felt her breath catch. His eyes were dark, storm-lit. When I saw them mocking you last night, something inside me broke loose. I couldn't stand by. Not again, not while someone gentle was being hurt. A tear slipped down Maugie's cheek. "Wyatt," she whispered, "you didn't fail your family, and you didn't fail me." He stared at her, long, searching, as if he was trying to decide whether to believe her. Before he could respond, a heavy thud hit the front door. They both froze. Another thud. Wyatt rose slowly, every muscle coiling with alertness. "Stay here," he murmured. Maggie clutched the quilt. "Be careful." Wyatt crossed the room in 3 silent strides, placed his hand on the rifle leaning beside the door, and opened it a crack. Snow blew in, and behind it, a man, tall, broad, wrapped in a fur coat with a scar cutting across his cheek. His horse stamped behind him, breath puffing in clouds. "Wyatt Blackwood," the stranger said, "we need to talk." Wyatt didn't open the door wider. About what? The stranger's cold eyes shifted past Wyatt, toward the faint shape of Maggie sitting at the table. A slow, ugly smile curved his mouth. "About your new wife?" Maggie's blood ran cold. Wyatt stepped fully into the doorway, blocking her from sight. "She's none of your business," he said. "Oh, I think she is." The man wiped snow from his beard. "Word travels fast in town, and her old employer, the dressmaker, claims she stole money before she left. $50. Maggie gasped. "What? No, I'd never—" Wyatt's voice dropped to a dangerous rumble. "That woman hates her. You expect me to take her word?" The stranger shrugged. "Town wants her back. They say she ran off to avoid punishment." Wyatt's fist tightened on the rifle. "She's not going anywhere." "Then you'll have trouble," the man said. "A lot of it." Wyatt shut the door in his face without another word. Maggie shot to her feet. "Wyatt, I didn't take anything. I left everything I owned behind. She hated me because I couldn't fit into the dresses she made." "I know," he said, "but if the town believes, I don't give a damn what the town believes." He set the rifle on the table. His hands cupped her face, gentle but sure. "You listen to me," he said, voice low. "You are not a thief. You are not a liar. And you're not going back there." Maggie's breath shook. "They'll come for me." "Let them." She stared up at him, heart pounding. "Wyatt, you could get hurt." His thumb brushed her cheek, a careful, protective touch that stole the air from her lungs. "I'd rather take a bullet than let someone drag you back into that hell." Her breath caught. He stepped even closer. "You're staying here," he said softly. "With me, if you want to." Maggie swallowed hard. "I want to." Something shifted in his eyes, something fierce, something unspoken, something warm. Outside, snow fell harder. Inside, danger and desire braided together in the firelit room. The storm rolled in faster than either of them expected. By mid-afternoon, the sky had turned the color of iron, thick with snow that fell in relentless sheets. Wyatt kept the fire roaring, kept Maggie close to the warmth, kept his rifle within arm's reach. He moved through the cabin with a quiet tension, as if listening for something only he could hear. Maggie watched him silently. Every step he took radiated danger and control. Every glance he sent toward the windows told her he was expecting trouble. And every time her breath hitched, he seemed to notice. "Stay near the hearth," he said as he added another log. "Are they really coming?" she asked. He didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes." Her hands trembled around the mug of tea. "Because of me." Wyatt turned sharply. "No," he said. Then he came closer, lowering his voice. "They're coming because they think I'm alone up here, because they think they can take what they want without consequence." He paused, just long enough for the truth to settle. "They're wrong." Maggie swallowed hard. She wasn't used to being defended. She wasn't used to mattering at all. Wyatt picked up his coat and rifle, then moved toward the door as wind howled outside. "They'll try talking first. Men like them always do. They want to win without a fight." "And if talking doesn't work?" she whispered. Wyatt looked over his shoulder, eyes like flint. "Then I make sure they never come back." Before Maggie could respond, a horn sounded in the distance, one long, low note, warning or a threat. Maggie's blood went cold. Wyatt opened the top half of the door and looked out. Through the thick swirl of snow, figures emerged. 3 men on horseback, lanterns swinging from their saddles. Behind them, a 4th man trudged on foot. The scarred man from earlier, Wyatt muttered under his breath, "Persistent bastard." The men stopped 10 yards from the porch. The leader, a broad man with a sheriff's badge pinned to his coat, cupped a hand around his mouth. "Blackwood, we're here for the girl." Wyatt didn't open the door any wider. "She isn't going anywhere." "She stole from her employer," the sheriff called. "She's wanted for questioning." "No, she's not," Wyatt growled. "She was framed." "That's for the law to decide." "Law?" Wyatt scoffed. "You mean Martha Wellington's father paying you to drag her back?" The sheriff stiffened. Wyatt had struck home. "We're not leaving without her," the sheriff barked. "If she's innocent, she'll prove it in town." Maggie shook her head violently. Her voice trembled as she moved closer to Wyatt. "Please, please don't make me go back." Wyatt stepped aside just enough for the sheriff to see her face behind him. "She stays," Wyatt said. The scarred man spat into the snow. "She tricked you, Blackwood. Big girl like that. She's good at pretending to be helpless." Wyatt's entire body went still. "Say that again," he said softly. The scarred man grinned. "She's a lying, thieving—" Wyatt stepped out onto the porch so fast the men jerked their reins. Snow whipped around him, his coat snapping in the wind, every inch of him radiating lethal intent. "You insult her one more time," Wyatt said, "and I'll put you in the ground myself." The scarred man swallowed hard, but didn't back down. The sheriff steadied his horse. "Wyatt, don't be foolish. There are 4 of us." Wyatt's expression didn't change. "There's one of me." He cocked the rifle. "That's enough." A beat of tense, frozen silence passed. Then a sound broke it. Soft footsteps behind Wyatt. Maggie. She stepped onto the porch, clutching the quilt around her shoulders, cheeks pale but eyes clear. Wyatt stiffened. "Maggie, stay inside." "No," she whispered. "I won't hide." The sheriff frowned. "Miss Hartwell, come quietly. No one wants trouble." Maggie took a shaky breath. "I didn't steal anything," she said. "I never would. But even if I proved it, you wouldn't believe me. You never have." The sheriff opened his mouth, but Maggie lifted her chin, just a fraction, but enough to quiet him. "I'm not going back to a place where I'm mocked, hated, or used to entertain people with nothing better to do." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. Wyatt stared at her, something fierce blooming in his eyes. The sheriff glanced at his men, uncertain. Then Maggie said the one thing no one expected. "I am staying with my husband." Wyatt's breath caught. The men froze, and in that instant, snow swirling, wind howling, her voice steady, Wyatt realized something. She wasn't pretending anymore. The sheriff cursed under his breath, defeated. "Fine, but if the dressmaker files a claim—" Wyatt cut him off. "Tell her to ride up here herself." The sheriff shivered. Not a chance. He yanked his horse around. The others followed, vanishing into the storm. When the last lantern disappeared, Wyatt finally lowered the rifle. He turned to Maggie. Snow clung to her hair, her lashes, the quilt wrapped around her like armor. "Why did you say that?" he asked, voice rough. She swallowed. "Because it was the only way to make them leave." Wyatt's breath warmed the air between them. "Maggie," he whispered, "you didn't have to choose me." Her eyes shimmered with something fragile and brave. "I didn't choose you," she said softly. "I chose us." The storm howled around them, but inside Wyatt's chest, something warm broke free. The door shut behind them with a heavy thud, muffling the storm, sealing out the world that had always been cruel to her, and the world that Wyatt had long ago stopped trusting. Inside, the cabin felt warmer than it ever had before. Maybe because Maggie was trembling. Maybe because Wyatt felt something in himself, trembling too. He set the rifle aside and turned to her. "Maggie," he said quietly, "you shouldn't have faced them. Not out there, not in the storm, not alone." She held the quilt tighter around her, snow melting into droplets on her lashes. "I wasn't alone," she said. Wyatt's breath caught. "You stepped in front of them," he said. "You risked—" "So did you," she whispered back. Silence rolled in, thick, warm, charged like the space between lightning and thunder. Wyatt exhaled hard, running a hand through his hair. "You don't understand. Men like that, once they set their sights on someone, they don't stop. They'll talk, they'll lie, they'll stir up trouble. You put yourself right in the middle." "I put myself beside you." Her voice cracked. "Is that so hard to believe?" Wyatt stilled. No one had stood beside him in 16 years. No one had chosen him, not since Clara, not since the worst winter of his life. He stepped closer. "Maggie," he said, softer this time, "I can protect you from them, from the town, from everything outside this cabin." He paused. "But I can't protect you from me?" Her heart hammered painfully. "Why would you need to?" "Because I'm not gentle the way a woman like you deserves," he said. "I don't talk pretty. I don't know how to be soft. I've spent too many years fighting the cold, fighting grief, fighting myself." His eyes burned in the firelight, molten gray. "You deserve tenderness," he said, "and I'm not sure I have any left." Maggie felt something inside her crack open, not with fear, but with understanding. She stepped closer until his breath warmed her forehead. "Wyatt," she whispered, "do you think kindness only comes from soft men? You carried me out of hell tonight. You told the town I mattered. You stood in front of me like I was worth protecting." Her hand trembled as she lifted it to his chest. "That's tenderness." Wyatt swallowed hard, chest rising under her palm. "They'll keep testing us," he said, "testing you. Then we face them together. Maggie?" His voice was a warning and a plea. She shook her head, tears gathering but not falling. "I may be overweight. I may not be the woman this town sees as worthy. But I know what loyalty feels like." Her voice steadied. "You showed it to me. Let me show it to you." Wyatt's breath faltered. For a moment, he looked like a man standing on the edge of something he both feared and needed. Slowly, so slowly he gave her every chance to pull away, he lifted a hand to her cheek. His thumb brushed the damp heat beneath her eye. "You're safe here," he whispered. Her lips parted. "And you?" He leaned his forehead to hers. "With you?" His voice broke softly. "For the first time in years, I think I might be." The fire crackled. The storm roared outside, and inside that quiet cabin, by the glow of burning logs, an unspoken door finally opened, one neither Maggie Hartwell nor Wyatt Blackwood could ever close again. Stories like this one don't belong to a single town, a single mountain, or a single pair of broken hearts. They belong to all of us. Anyone who's ever felt overlooked, anyone who's ever been laughed at, anyone who ever wondered if love could still find them in the quiet corners of their lives. Every time I read your comments, I'm reminded of how stories carry us across countries, languages, and nights that feel too long. Tell me, where in the world are you listening from today? And if you still believe love can bloom in the most unlikely places, don't go far. The next story is already waiting for you.